Today, Obscurist Tourist, that's me. I'm going to be showing you one of the most haunted places in Toronto, and also one of the oldest buildings in Toronto. And we have to go to Toronto Island to see it. And right behind me, right there, I'm going to be taking the tiki taxi, a little water taxi over to the island. If you really want to live, forget about the big boat. You take one of these bad boys over, gets you over in about 6 minutes. Let's go. Toronto Island. Got my bike, and we are all aboard the tiki taxi. Very festive and tiki, Polynesian styles. Headed to the island. We got a little tiki gods to bring us luck on our journey across Lake Ontario to the islands that sit just offshore from downtown Toronto.
We have arrived, and there she is. Quite the contrast to everything else in this area of the island, and there is a certain aura about this structure that just emanates when you actually see it in person, and I'm not entirely sure if that aura exists because of its legend, or if the legend is a side effect of its aura. So let's just get right into the history of this place. The Gibraltar Point Lighthouse was built in 1808 to help guide ships to Toronto's harbour from what was then a sandy peninsula on Hanlan's Bay on Centre Island here in Toronto. It was named Gibraltar after the famous British-owned point at the edge of the Mediterranean. Now, the tower is built from limestone quarried near Queenston, and the light on the top ran on whale oil back in its day, but eventually became electric in the winter of 1916-1917. The light was turned off for the last time by lighthouse keeper D.D. Dodds in 1957 and eventually decommissioned in 1958. Today, this very lighthouse is the oldest one left on the Great Lakes and the second oldest in all of Canada. Chances are, if you grew up in Toronto, you've most likely heard the lighthouse ghost story. I myself remember seeing the lighthouse on a school trip as a kid, and the story sent shivers right down my spine. It really stuck with me, and it was a curiosity that perhaps sparked my lifelong interest in the paranormal. The lighthouse was there during the Battle of York in 1813 when American ships invaded the town of York, the original name for Toronto back in those days. The battle culminated in the burning of the Parliament buildings, which led to the retaliation by the British in the War of 1812 as they burned down the White House. Yeah, that White House. During the war, the first lighthouse keeper, J.P. Rademuller, a German immigrant to Upper Canada, kept watch at Gibraltar Point for enemy ships and friendly vessels returning to a safe harbor. This lighthouse keeper, however, did not live to see the end of the war. Rademuller disappeared under mysterious circumstances on January 2nd in 1815. The story goes that he was murdered by two soldiers who had been enjoying his home-brewed beer Versions of the story differ slightly, however. One version told in the mid-2000s was that Rademüller was killed after the soldiers bought the beer but saw it freeze on the cold winter night and assumed that the alcohol content was so low that the lighthouse keeper was trying to rip them off. Regardless of the truth, most agree that Rademüller was killed that night and dismembered by his killers. It is said that the two soldiers buried his body in a few graves near the lighthouse, and that Rademüller's ghost has haunted the site ever since. The story was told by John Ross Robertson in his 1908 book, Landmarks of Toronto, though even he raises some skepticism that the murder ever occurred. But Robertson recounted that he had heard the story from the then current lighthouse keeper, George Durnan, who had apparently gone looking for a body and had eventually dug up a coffin containing a jawbone. As you can see, the plaque on the Gibraltar Lighthouse mentions this very ghost story, as well as the jawbone, although the decision to include this little anecdote was a somewhat controversial decision at the time. Still, the story of Rademüller's demise lives on, and the lighthouse stands here on the shores as an infamous reminder of the darker side of this city's origins.